My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial the bank. $78,000. Drained. Gone. My father just snorted. We needed it more. That's when I knew. That's when the trembling stopped and a cold resolve set in. I looked him dead in the eye, clutching my bag, and said, "Then you won't mind what's coming next." They just laughed. A second later, a deafening bang shook the house to its foundations. The door flew open. "Hi, I'm Mandy, and at 32 years old, I honestly thought I had finally broken free. I believed I had escaped the toxic financial manipulation that had shadowed my entire childhood. I'd spent 14 grueling years building my independence, inch by painful inch. But I let my guard down at a family reunion. And the very next morning, $78,000 vanished from my bank account. When I confronted my father, he didn't even flinch. He just snorted when needed it more than you. That single moment, that dismissive snort, it shattered every last illusion of family I still desperately clung to. You see, growing up with financially unstable parents wasn't just a challenge. It was my reality, shaping everything I was. My father, Robert, he was a gambler. Not just a casual bettor. I mean, the man never met a gambling opportunity he could resist. Slot machines, card games, sports betting, illegal dogfights in abandoned warehouses. You name it, he was there. He'd disappear for days, sometimes returning flush with cash, showering us with extravagant, fleeting gifts. More often, though, he'd come back defeated, desperate, eyes scanning for anything of value to pawn. And my mother, Diana, she was his enabler every step of the way. Ironically, she worked as a bank teller. But her paycheck, it never lasted. "Your father just needs one good win, Mandy," she'd whisper, rummaging through my room for spare change. "His luck is about to turn around." It never did. My earliest memory of their exploitation. I was 6 years old. I had this pink ceramic piggy bank, shaped like a ballet dancer. For months, I meticulously saved every quarter from lemonade stands, every dollar from helping neighbors. The weight of that pig in my hands, it filled me with such pride. Then, one night, I heard a crash from my bedroom. I walked in to find my father standing over the shattered remains of my piggy bank, coins clutched tight in his fist. "Just borrowing this, princess," he said, not even looking at me. "Double your money by morning, promise." The money never returned. None of the subsequent piggy banks ever did, either. My allowance, when I actually received it, became a cruel family joke. Borrowing from the Mandy Bank, my father would bellow, snatching the $5 meant to last me the entire week. By 16, I was a master at hiding money in places they'd never think to look. By 17, I had a secret bank account hidden under my Aunt Lisa's name. And by 18, I walked out the door with $342 to my name and a solemn vow I would never, ever depend on anyone again. Those first years on my own, they were brutal, absolutely grueling. I was a waitress from 5 a.m. until 2 p.m., then a retail clerk until 10 p.m. I'd crash for barely 4 hours before doing it all over again. Community college classes crammed into every spare moment between shifts. I live in a cramped studio apartment with 4 other girls, each of us clinging to our tiny corner, sharing one bathroom with the entire floor. But I was determined. Through sheer grit, I maintained a 3.8 GPA, all while working 70-hour weeks. Then, during my junior year, a marketing internship became my salvation. My boss, Vivian, she saw something in me that I barely recognized myself. She mentored me, recommended me for a paid position, and wrote this glowing recommendation that helped me land an entry-level marketing job right after graduation. For the next decade, I climbed. Methodically, deliberately. Junior copywriter, then content strategist, campaign manager, department lead. Every single promotion was met with even stricter financial discipline. While my colleagues splurged on new cars and exotic vacations, I stayed in my one-bedroom apartment, drove the same reliable sedan, and poured every single spare dollar into savings and investments. Last year, at 31, it all culminated. I was promoted to senior marketing director at one of Seattle's largest firms. My salary literally doubled overnight. For the very first time in my life, I could breathe easily about money. That $78,000 sitting in my savings account. It wasn't just cash. It was my freedom. It was the down payment on the house I'd already picked out. It was the absolute foundation of the secure life I had painstakingly built, inch by painful inch. Throughout all those years of building my career, my relationship with my parents remained strained but civil. They'd call, always when they needed money. And I, with this naive, desperate hope of finally earning their approval, would initially provide it. Just until payday, they'd promise. Just to cover the electric bill. The loans, of course, were never repaid. And the request just grew larger and larger. 3 years ago, I lost $5,000 to them. It was for emergency medical bills. I later discovered it funded a gambling trip to Atlantic City. That was it. I finally set firm boundaries. No more money. No more bailouts. No more enabling. Their response? Predictable. I became the cold daughter, the selfish one who abandoned her family, the ungrateful child who forgot where she came from. Monthly calls dwindled to quarterly texts, then almost complete silence. When the invitation for the family reunion arrived last month, I almost tossed it. 3 years of minimal contact had given me space to finally heal. My therapist, Dr. Winter, she suggested that attending, but with really strong boundaries, might provide closure. You can engage without being vulnerable, she advised. Observe rather than participate. So, against every fiber of my being, against my better judgment, I confirmed my attendance. One weekend, one chance, just to see if any real family connection, any genuine warmth, remained possible. Maybe time and distance had changed our dynamic. Maybe they had grown, just as I had. God, how desperately I wanted to believe we could be a normal family, and how completely that hope would ultimately betray me. I pulled up to my parents' house that Friday evening in June, and my jaw almost hit the floor. Renovations. Everywhere. The shabby bungalow of my childhood now boasted brand new siding, a sprawling wraparound porch with fancy wicker furniture, and landscaping that absolutely screamed professional maintenance. All things that seemed utterly impossible on their claimed income. When I commented on it, my mother waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, your father's just been doing a little handyman work for the neighbors," she chirped. "You know how clever he is with repairs." I did know. Clever enough to jury-rig solutions that inevitably failed within weeks. Nothing my father ever built actually lasted. But these renovations, these spoke of skilled contractors and substantial investment. The interior told the same story. New hardwood floors gleamed where stained carpet once was. Kitchen appliances shimmered with the showroom shine of recent purchase. A monstrous 70-inch television dominated the living room wall. For people who regularly called me, pleading for help with their utility bills, they were living surprisingly well. Mandy, my Aunt Lisa, bless her heart, embraced me at the door, whispering, "Brace yourself, honey. Everyone's in rave form tonight." Lisa had been my lifeline, the one adult who always saw through my parents' manipulation. Her presence gave me a sliver of comfort. The house quickly filled with extended family, cousins I barely recognized, uncles arguing politics, kids racing through the rooms like a stampede. In the kitchen, my mother held court, accepting compliments on her elaborate spread of catered food, which she, of course, claimed to have prepared herself. There she is. My father spotted me from across the room. The big career woman. "Come give your old man a hug." He actually seemed genuinely proud, bragging to everyone within earshot. My daughter, the marketing executive, always knew she was smart. Gets that from my side, you know. His arm draped heavily, possessively, across my shoulders as he paraded me around. My mother was equally attentive, bringing me drinks I didn't ask for, introducing me repeatedly as our successful daughter. She asked detailed questions about my job, my apartment, my friends. She had never shown such interest in my life before. "They're laying it on thick," my younger brother, Jacob, muttered when we had a moment alone. Jacob had followed my example, moving out at 18 and maintaining a careful distance. He worked as an auto mechanic in Portland, only visiting our parents on major holidays. Mom asked if you were still with that investment broker. He warned, eyes narrowed. Seems really interested in your financial situation. Patrick and I broke up 6 months ago. I replied, genuinely confused. I told her that when it happened. Jacob just raised an eyebrow. She also mentioned you must be doing really well to afford that luxury condo downtown. I live in a standard apartment building in Capitol Hill. Nothing luxurious about it. A familiar, cold unease crept up my spine. They were fishing, testing the waters. Despite all these blaring warning signs, a part of me, a small, desperate part, still wanted to believe this weekend could somehow heal old wounds. When we gathered for dinner, and my father asked me to sit at his right hand, I felt this childish, illogical pleasure I couldn't suppress. When he listened intently to my explanation of our latest marketing campaign, I glimpsed the father I had always wanted. After dinner, cousins I hadn't seen in years pulled out old photo albums. We laughed over embarrassing childhood pictures, reminisced about summers at the lake. For a few precious hours, it felt like genuine connection. Remember when Mandy saved up for 6 months to buy that bicycle? My mother chirped, pointing to a photo of 12-year-old me proudly standing beside a blue Schwinn. She was so independent even then. What she conveniently didn't mention was how that bicycle had disappeared 2 weeks later, supposedly stolen from our garage. I later found the pawn shop receipt. My father had sold it. Independent and smart with money, my father added, a little too jovially. Not like her old dad. But hey, that reminds me, how is that investment portfolio of yours doing, Patrick? Had you in some good stocks? Right. The question seemed casual, but his eyes held an unusual, unnerving focus. Still basking in the warm, unfamiliar attention, I answered more openly than I should have. Actually, I switched advisors after Patrick and I split. My new investments have performed really well this year. My advisor shifted some assets into tech startups that nearly tripled. My father let out a low whistle. Smart girl. Bet you got a nice nest egg growing. She does, Aunt Lisa interrupted firmly, her voice a steel wall. And she works incredibly hard for every penny of it. The conversation shifted, but throughout the evening, financial topics kept resurfacing. How much did marketing directors make these days? Was I planning any big purchases soon? Had I considered helping Jacob with his student loans? By midnight, exhausted from the constant vigilance, I excused myself to the guest room. I carefully placed my purse, with my wallet and phone, in the bedside drawer, a habit forged from years of protecting my belongings. Before sleep finally claimed me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in my parents' home for decades. A fragile hope. A belief that maybe, just maybe, we could build something resembling a healthy family relationship. That hope, my friends, would not survive the morning. I woke at 7:30 the next morning, my phone buzzing relentlessly with transaction alerts. Groggily, I opened my banking app, fully expecting to see a usual coffee shop purchase or streaming service renewal. Instead, I froze. My breath hitched. The balance displayed $837.22. $83.22. Just yesterday, that account had held $78,837.22. My first thought was a technical glitch. It had to be. I closed the app, cleared the cache, reopened it. The balance remained unchanged. My heart was pounding, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I checked my transaction history. A terrifying series of transfers had systematically drained the account, all processed between 2 and 4 in the morning. Every single one authorized from an unknown device. Still in my pajamas, trembling, I called the bank's fraud department, pacing the small guest room, my feet silent on the new hardwood. The hold music was an unbearable torture. When a representative finally answered, their word crushed any remaining hope of an easy resolution. Yes, Miss Carter, we do show several large transfers from your savings account last night. I did not authorize those transfers. I insisted, my voice cracking. It must be fraud. According to our records, she replied, her tone annoyingly calm. The transfers were authorized using your correct password and the authentication app on your registered device. The accessing IP address shows. She paused. The location appears to be your current location according to our records. My blood ran cold. Absolute zero. Can you tell me exactly where the transfers went? I asked, the words barely a whisper. Several different accounts, Miss Carter. The largest was to a Robert Carter. Is that name familiar to you? Robert Carter. My father. My own father. He had somehow accessed my accounts and systematically drained my entire life savings while I slept, vulnerable, under his roof. By the way, if you're still with me after that bombshell, please consider hitting the subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next, and there are more unbelievable stories coming. I ended the call, my mind racing, and frantically searched my purse. My wallet seemed untouched, but when I checked the secondary compartment, where I kept a small notebook with account information, I noticed it. Subtle differences. A few items shifted, not quite where I'd left them. Someone had been in my bag. Memories from the previous evening flashed through my mind, now horrifyingly clear. My mother insisting on taking my jacket to hang it properly. My purse, left briefly in the living room when Lisa called me to see something in the garden. And that unusually deep, heavy sleep I'd fallen into after the single glass of wine my mother had pressed upon me. It wasn't just an accident. They had planned this. The entire reunion. The unusual warmth. The pointed questions about my finances. All of it, a calculated, horrifying prelude to this betrayal. Then, the physical symptoms hit me. My hands trembled so violently I dropped my phone. It clattered against the new hardwood. Nausea clawed at my throat, driving me to the bathroom where I retched painfully, dry heaves racking my body. Sweat beaded on my forehead, despite the cool morning air. $78,000. My house down payment. My emergency fund. My entire sense of security. My phone buzzed again. A text message from my cousin Ellie. Thanks for the amazing gift. How did you know I wanted this exact laptop for college? Uncle Rob said you insisted on helping with my education. Then another, from Uncle Thomas. Generous of you to contribute to the family vacation rental. Rob says you're covering half. And finally, from my brother, Mandy. Call me a sap. Something is wrong. Mom and Dad are suddenly flushed with cash, buying everyone gifts. I called Jacob immediately, struggling to keep my voice steady as I explained what had happened. I knew it, he said, his voice tight with anger. They've been planning this for months. Dad told me last week they were expecting a windfall soon. I just thought maybe he'd actually gotten a decent job. Mandy, I am so sorry. Did you know they would do this? I asked, needing to be certain, needing to hear him say it. No, God, no. I would have warned you. But I knew something was off about this whole reunion. They've never cared about family gatherings before. As we spoke, I heard it. Activity downstairs. Laughter. The clink of dishes. My parents and the remaining family members having breakfast. As if they hadn't just committed an act of unspeakable theft against their own daughter. $78,000. Jacob, I choked out. Everything I saved for my house. Years of work. How could they do this? Because they don't see it as yours, he replied softly. In their minds, family money is communal. And they deserve it more, because they're the parents. They'll never understand what they did was wrong. I ended the call and sat heavily on the edge of the bed, trying to gather my fractured thoughts. This wasn't just a family dispute. This was theft, plain and simple. They had accessed my accounts without permission and transferred my money. The fact that they were my parents changed nothing about the legality of their actions. But, oh God, those family complications made everything messier. Would the police even take this seriously? Would the bank reverse the transfers when the access had come from my own devices, with my own passwords? And what would this do to the extended family if I pursued charges against my own parents? $78,000. I couldn't simply write it off. That money represented years of sacrifice. Ramen dinners and declined social invitations. 60-hour work weeks and delayed dreams. I heard my father's booming laugh from downstairs, followed by my mother's delighted response. They were celebrating. While I sat shattered in the guest room, they were celebrating their theft as if it were a windfall they had somehow earned. In that very moment, something inside me hardened. The last lingering, foolish hope of reconciliation died. The last obligation of familial loyalty evaporated into thin air. They were not family. They were thieves who just happened to share my DNA, and I would treat them accordingly. My first instinct was primal: storm downstairs, scream, call the police right then and there. But 32 years of dealing with my parents had taught me one thing: impulsive reactions only gave them power. They thrived in chaos, in emotional outbursts. If I wanted justice, true justice, I needed to be strategic. I texted my friend Sarah, a financial crimes attorney. Despite the early Saturday hour, her response was immediate: do not confront them alone. Document everything. Call the bank again and formally report the fraud. I'll meet you at my office at noon. Next, I called Aunt Lisa, who had left for her hotel late the previous night. I wondered if something like this might happen, she said, her voice heavy with disappointment. Your mother's been dropping hints about a new car and home improvements for weeks. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Do not go downstairs alone. While waiting for Lisa, I moved with a cold, methodical purpose. I gathered evidence. Screenshots of the unauthorized transfers. Photos of where my bag had clearly been searched. I even recorded a video walkthrough of the house, documenting all the recent, expensive purchases that starkly contradicted my parents' claimed financial hardship. And then I found something truly disturbing on my phone. A notification showing my banking authentication app had been accessed at 2:15 in the morning. While I was asleep, they must have used my fingerprint. While I was unconscious, the sheer violation of that, the intimate betrayal, made me physically ill all over again. When Lisa arrived, I quietly slipped out the back door to meet her in her car. She hugged me tightly, and that's when I finally broke down. The tears streamed, hot and angry. I know a good lawyer, she said, when my sobs subsided. Your cousin Michael handles financial crimes. This is theft, Mandy. Plain and simple. The fact that they're your parents, it makes it worse, not better. We drove directly to Sarah's office, where she and Michael were already waiting. For the next 3 hours, we meticulously built our case. Sarah, leveraging her credentials, contacted the bank's fraud department, establishing a formal investigation. Michael prepared documentation for a police report, and Lisa, unwavering, provided written testimony about my parents' spending patterns and those chilling comments they'd made about accessing my money. Here's what we need to understand, Michael explained gently, his eyes serious. This will get ugly. Your parents will claim you gave them permission. They'll say it was a gift or a loan. They will turn family members against you. Are you prepared for that? They already stole my money, I replied, my voice steady, though my stomach churned. What else can they take from me? Your relationships with extended family, Sarah counted off, her expression grim. Your peace of mind, your energy for months, maybe years, of legal proceedings. This won't be quick or easy. Neither was earning that money, I said, firmly. I want it back. All of it. We developed a multi-pronged approach. First, the bank would freeze any remaining funds in the transferred accounts. Second, we would file a police report for identity theft and fraud. Third, and most crucially, we would confront my parents with legal representation present, giving them one single opportunity to return the money before escalating to criminal charges. Before leaving Sarah's office, I called Dr. Winters, my therapist, and scheduled an emergency session that afternoon. You need emotional support as much as legal support, she reminded me during our call. This is a profound betrayal by the people who should have protected you most. I spent an hour with Dr. Winters, processing the complex, swirling emotions. Raw rage at the violation. Deep grief for the family relationship I had foolishly hoped might still be possible. And shame. Shame at having let my guard down, despite years of evidence that my parents had never, ever changed. You did nothing wrong by hoping for a healthy relationship with your parents, Dr. Winters assured me, her voice kind. That desire is natural and human. They are the ones who violated trust, not you. By evening, Our legal strategy was perfectly in place. Sarah had a formal demand letter prepared. The bank had flagged the accounts where my money had been transferred. Michael had filed preliminary paperwork for a police report, pending my final decision on whether to press charges. I spent the night at Lisa's hotel, utterly unable to face returning to my parents' house. Throughout the evening, increasingly concerned texts poured in from Jacob. He had left the reunion early, driving back to Portland. "They are buying everyone gifts with your money," he reported, his disgust palpable. "It's absolutely sickening." The next morning, Lisa, Sarah, Michael, and I met for breakfast to review our approach one final time. Michael had arranged for a sheriff's deputy to accompany us, waiting outside unless needed. Sarah had all the legal documents organized in a neat portfolio. Lisa had even contacted several key family members who had witnessed my parents' sudden spending, securing their support if testimony became necessary. As for me, I packed a small bag. It held all the evidence we had gathered. Records of previous financial manipulations by my parents. Documented proof of the source of the stolen funds. Years of bank statements showing the disciplined saving that had built that account. Printouts of text messages where my parents had previously borrowed money, with promises of repayment that never materialized. But most importantly, I brought my resolve. For 32 years, I had alternated between seeking their approval and desperately protecting myself from their exploitation. Today, that cycle would end. Permanently. "Are you ready?" Sarah asked, her gaze steady, as we pulled up in front of my parents' house. I took a deep, fortifying breath. I have been ready for this, I told her, my entire life. We arrived at my parents' house at exactly 10 o'clock that morning. The sheriff's deputy parked discreetly down the street, ready to approach when signaled. Michael stayed in the car with him while Sarah, Lisa, and I walked to the front door. My hand trembled, just slightly, as I rang the doorbell of the home where I had grown up. No matter how prepared I thought I was, confronting the people who had raised me, then so utterly betrayed me, sent adrenaline coursing through my body like an electric current. My father answered. Surprise flickered across his face for a split second before he plastered on a practiced, jovial smile. "Mandy, we wondered where you disappeared to yesterday. And Lisa, good to see you again. Who's your friend?" "This is Sarah," I said flatly, my voice devoid of emotion. "My attorney." His smile faltered, just for a moment. Then it returned, tighter, like a mask. "Attorney, what is this about?" "Diana, come see who's here." My mother appeared behind him, wiping her hands nervously on a dish towel. Her eyes darted between us, lingering on Sarah's professional attire and the ominous portfolio tucked under her arm. "May we come in?" Lisa asked, her tone making it crystal clear this was not really a question. My father stepped back, ushering us into the living room. Just 2 days ago, we had shared family photos and laughter here. Now, the atmosphere crackled with unbearable tension. "Rub it, Diana," I began, formally, every word chosen with precision. "You know exactly why I am here. You accessed my financial accounts without permission and transferred $78,000 to yourselves and others." My father didn't even attempt to deny it. Instead, he scoffed, settling heavily into his new leather recliner, a smirk playing on his lips. "It's just money, Mandy. You got plenty more where that came from with your fancy job." "That was my house down payment," I replied, struggling to keep my voice from shaking, my anger a raw wound. "Money I saved for 14 years. We needed it more," he said, with a dismissive wave of his hand. "The family needed it. You'd understand if you weren't so selfish." My mother stepped forward, her eyes wide with that practiced, innocent vulnerability. "Honey, we were going to discuss it with you. We just knew you'd say no if we asked first." "You always say no these days," I countered, "because you never repay what you borrow. That's theft, not borrowing. We gave you life." My father snapped, his facade of joviality finally evaporating. His face was red. "Everything you have comes from us. That makes it family money." Sarah stepped forward, opening her portfolio with a crisp snap. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter, I represent Mandy in this matter. What you have described is not how the law views parent-child relationships or financial obligations. You have committed identity theft, bank fraud, and grand larceny. My mother's eyes, suddenly, truly, filled with tears. How could you bring a lawyer against your own parents after everything we've done for you? What, exactly, have you done for me? I asked quietly, my voice steel. Stolen my childhood savings. Taken the bicycle I bought with my own money. Borrowed thousands you never repaid. Or are you referring to accessing my accounts while I slept in your home as a guest? You ungrateful little, my father began, starting to rise from his chair, his fists clenching. I have documented everything, I interrupted, cutting him off cold. Every unauthorized transfer, every account where my money was sent, every purchase you have made since stealing it. The bank has already frozen the remaining funds. My father's face flushed a deeper, furious red. You cannot prove anything. You stayed in our house. Maybe you gave us your passwords. Maybe you authorized those transfers yourself. And now you're having regrets. Actually, Sarah interjected, calm and precise. The transfers occurred between 2 and 4 in the morning, while Mandy was asleep. The authentication was completed using her fingerprint while she was unconscious, possibly after being given something to ensure deep sleep. That elevates this to a more serious category of crime. My mother's tears dried instantly. Her face hardened. You've always been dramatic, Mandy. Always exaggerating. No one will believe you over us. The evidence speaks for itself, Lisa said, her voice firm. And I will testify to your comments about accessing Mandy's accounts, Diana. So will others who heard you discussing it. You have a choice, I said, reaching into my bag where we had placed the legal documents. My hand grasped them, a tangible representation of my resolve. Return my money in full by tomorrow, or I press charges for theft and fraud. My father laughed, a harsh, ugly sound, entirely devoid of humor. Go ahead. See how that plays with the family when you drag your own parents to court. Who do you think they'll side with? The daughter who abandoned her family? Or the parents who sacrificed everything for her? Then you won't mind what comes next, I said, my hand still on my bag, my eyes locked on his. My parents exchanged quick, confident glances, then both laughed dismissively. At that precise, heart-stopping moment, a loud bang shook the house. The sheriff's deputy, right on cue, knocked firmly on the front door. My father's laughter died abruptly. The door flew open. Michael entered, alongside the deputy, legal papers held firmly in his hand. Robert and Diana Carter, the deputy asked, though it was clearly a formality. I have here an emergency order freezing your assets in connection with a fraud investigation. My father jumped to his feet. This is ridiculous. You cannot just barge into my home. Actually, so, I can, the deputy replied, his voice calm, authoritative. I have a warrant related to this financial crimes investigation. He handed my father the document. These accounts have been flagged for suspicious activity, consistent with identity theft and unauthorized transfers. My mother began to cry again, this time with genuine, undeniable fear in her eyes. Mandy, how could you do this to us? We are your parents. Parents do not steal from their children, I replied, my voice steady, unbroken. They protect them. The confrontation escalated quickly. My father's indignation curdled into rage, then into naked panic as the seriousness of the situation finally dawned on him. My mother alternated between desperate pleading and vicious accusations, claiming I had always been selfish, always cold, always misunderstood them. As the deputy explained the legal process that would follow, the front door opened again. My Aunt Ruth and Uncle Thomas entered, having arrived for the weekend barbecue my parents had planned, ironically, to celebrate their windfall. What is going on here? Ruth asked, taking in the chaotic scene with utter confusion. Your brother stole $78,000 from Mandy's accounts, Lisa explained bluntly, without a hint of hesitation. Now he's facing the consequences. The look of profound shock on their faces confirmed they had not known the true source of my parents' sudden generosity. Uncle Thomas turned to my father, disbelief etched across his features. Rob, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't steal from your own daughter." My father's silence was answer enough. As more family members arrived for the planned celebration, the scene became increasingly chaotic. Some, out of reflexive family loyalty, defended my parents. Others, hearing the horrifying details, stepped back in horror, their expressions sickening. My cousin Ellie, tears streaming down her face, tearfully offered to return the laptop purchase with my stolen money. Jacob arrived, having driven through the night from Portland, and stood firmly, silently, by my side. Throughout it all, I maintained a calm certainty that had settled deep within me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. It was about finally, definitively, breaking the cycle of exploitation that had defined our relationship for decades. By afternoon, my parents faced a stark reality. Their accounts were frozen. Their recent purchases were documented as evidence. Family members who had received gifts were returning them, horrified to learn they had been bought with stolen money. The meticulously crafted facade of generous parents had crumbled, revealing the ugly truth they had hidden for years. "This is not over," my father threatened, his voice a low growl, as we prepared to leave. "Family does not do this to family." "You're right," I agreed, meeting his gaze directly, unflinchingly. "Family does not do this to family. Remember that the next time you consider stealing from your daughter." We left them standing there, in their newly renovated living room, surrounded by the material goods they had valued more than their relationship with their own child. As painful as that confrontation had been, with each step away from that house, I felt an immense, profound weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in my life, I had refused to be their victim. The weeks following that explosive confrontation unfolded in a blur of legal proceedings, intense emotional processing, and a million practical adjustments. The immediate financial impact was significant. While the bank had frozen my parents' accounts, actually recovering the money proved complicated. Some had already been spent. Other portions had been transferred to relatives who, it turned out, had unknowingly accepted gifts purchased with stolen funds. Michael guided me through filing a formal police report, which resulted in my parents being charged with identity theft and financial fraud. The prosecuting attorney warned me, "This case could take months to resolve, Mandy, especially if your parents fight the charges." "They will fight," I told him with certainty. Admitting guilt would mean admitting they were wrong. They are utterly incapable of that. Sure enough, my parents immediately hired a high-powered defense attorney specializing in family financial disputes. Their defense strategy emerged quickly. The money, they claimed, had been a gift. I had given them my passwords voluntarily. This was nothing more than a daughter having regrets about helping her struggling parents. The family fractured along predictable lines. Some relatives, particularly those who had benefited from my parents' temporary wealth, stood firmly with them. Others, who had witnessed their manipulative behavior over years, quietly supported me. The family group chat exploded with accusations. My character was questioned by people who barely knew me. "How could you put your own parents through this?" my cousin Ryan demanded when he encountered me at the courthouse. "Over money. Is that all family means to you?" "This isn't about money," I replied, my voice steady. "This is about trust, respect, and boundaries." They violated all three. Aunt Lisa became my absolute rock during this period. She opened her home to me whenever I needed to escape the constant stress. She attended every single legal proceeding, her silent, unwavering presence a powerful reminder that not all family relationships were toxic. Jacob, my brother, struggled with his own complicated emotions. While he supported my decision to pursue legal action, the reality of potentially seeing our parents convicted of crimes weighed heavily on him. "I keep thinking about Dad teaching me to ride a bike," he confessed during a late-night phone call. "About Mom making soup when I was sick. Were those moments real, or just more manipulation?" "Both can be true, Jacob," I told him. "They can have loved us and still treated us terribly. We can remember the good moments without excusing the bad ones." Professionally, the situation created unexpected challenges. I had to take emergency leave to deal with the legal proceedings, explaining the horrifying situation to my boss in humiliating detail to justify my absence during a crucial campaign launch. Vivian, my mentor-turned-supervisor, was unexpectedly supportive. Family financial abuse is more common than people realize. Mandy, she told me, her eyes compassionate. Take the time you need. Your job will be waiting. My carefully built financial security, forged over 14 grueling years, had been shattered overnight. While I still had other investments and my steady income, the loss of my house down payment meant delaying that dream indefinitely. I moved my remaining money to a new bank, implementing enhanced security measures, including biometric verification that absolutely could not be accessed while I slept. The mental health toll proved perhaps the most significant aftermath. Despite weekly sessions with Dr. Winters, I struggled profoundly with trust issues that affected every single relationship. I became hypervigilant about my finances, checking my accounts multiple times daily. Sleep eluded me for months, as I replayed the betrayal in endless, tormenting loops. What you're experiencing is trauma, Mandy, Dr. Winters explained gently. Being victimized by parents creates a unique kind of injury because it violates our most fundamental trust. Social media became a battlefield I had not anticipated. My mother, always skilled at presenting herself as the victim, posted heartbreaking updates about her ungrateful daughter who had turned on her own parents in their time of need. Distant relatives and family friends, who knew nothing of our history, left comments of support for them and outright condemnation for me. I made the difficult decision to deactivate my accounts temporarily, cutting off yet another connection to the extended family I had foolishly hoped to rebuild relationships with. 6 weeks after the confrontation, I experienced my first serious wavering. The constant stress had affected my physical health. I had lost 12 pounds, developed chronic insomnia, and suffered frequent, debilitating migraine headaches. The legal bills mounted, despite Michael's reduced family rate. A part of me wondered, was pursuing this case truly worth the cost? Not just in money, but in my own well-being? I called Lisa in a moment of profound weakness. Maybe I should just let it go, I whispered, tears welling. Write off the money as the cost of finally learning who they really are. You could do that, she acknowledged, her voice soft but firm. No one would blame you for prioritizing your peace over justice. But Mandy, this cycle will never end unless you end it. Your parents have never faced consequences for their actions. That is why they keep repeating them. She was absolutely right, of course. Throughout my entire childhood and early adulthood, my parents had faced no real repercussions for their financial exploitation. Each time they took without permission, each time they borrowed without repaying, each time they violated boundaries without apology, they learned that behavior was acceptable. This had to stop. The very next day, a renewed resolve surged through me. I reaffirmed my commitment to seeing the case through. Not out of vengeance, not out of spite, but out of a deep-seated determination to finally break a pattern that had defined far too much of my life. As summer bled into fall, small victories began to accumulate. The bank restored $34,000 that had been directly traced and recovered. My cousin Ellie, true to her word, returned the laptop, and several other relatives either returned gifts or paid an equivalent value. My parents' attempt to fraudulently transfer ownership of their house to my Uncle Thomas, to protect it from potential judgments, was blocked by the court. But most significantly, I began building a new support system. One comprised not of biological relatives, but of chosen family. My incredible friends rallied around me with weekend dinners, movie nights, and the simple, invaluable gift of normalcy amidst the chaos. My colleague, Zoe, invited me to her family's Thanksgiving, where, for the first time in memory, I experienced holiday warmth without a shred of underlying tension. Through it all, I kept reminding myself that healing would not follow a linear path. Some days, I felt strong and absolutely certain of my decision. Other days, I questioned everything, wondering if I was overreacting or being unforgiving. Dr. Winters assured me these fluctuations were normal, a natural part of processing betrayal by those who should have been most trustworthy. Family relationships are complicated precisely because they are involuntary, she explained. We don't choose our parents, and society places enormous pressure on us to maintain those relationships, regardless of how harmful they may be. Giving yourself permission to prioritize your well-being over family obligation is a profound act of self-care. By December, 7 months after the theft, I had recovered nearly $50,000 through various legal mechanisms. My parents still face criminal charges, with a trial date set for February. The family remained sharply divided, though several relatives who had initially sided with my parents had quietly reached out after learning more of the ugly details of their actions. The most unexpected, and perhaps most beautiful, development came from Jacob. He had processed his own childhood experiences through therapy and emerged with a clarity I still sometimes lacked. They will never change, he told me over coffee during a rare in-person visit. But we can. We can build something better, something healthier. Not with them, but with each other and the people we choose to call family. For the first time since the theft, I felt genuine hope for the future. Not the naive hope that had led me to attend the family reunion, but something stronger, more resilient. A hope built on the solid foundation of self-respect and the boundaries I had fought so hard to establish. Exactly 1 year after discovering the theft, I stood in the courtroom, heart pounding, as the judge delivered the final ruling in our case. My parents, finally realizing the gravity of their situation, had accepted a plea agreement rather than risk a full trial. They admitted to lesser charges of unauthorized access and financial exploitation in exchange for reduced penalties. The court ordered full restitution of the stolen funds, plus interest, totaling $84,620. My parents were sentenced to 3 years probation, mandatory financial counseling, and 200 hours of community service. The conviction would remain on their records permanently. As they left the courtroom, my mother attempted one final, desperate manipulation. She approached me, tears streaming down her face. We only wanted what was best for the family, she insisted, her voice trembling. Someday you will understand what it means to sacrifice for people you love. I looked at this woman, the woman who had given me life, then spent decades taking pieces of it back. I already understand sacrifice, I replied quietly, my voice firm and clear. I sacrificed the fantasy of having parents who put my well-being above their desires. That ends today. My father didn't speak to me at all. His eyes, so strikingly like my own, held only raw, bitter resentment as he followed my mother out of the courtroom. That silent exit, that final, hateful look, marked the end of our relationship more definitively than any legal judgment ever could. The decision to permanently cut contact with my parents did not come easily, not by a long shot. Society, you know, it expects endless forgiveness for family, regardless of the harm inflicted. But they are your parents, became a weary refrain I heard repeatedly from well-meaning friends and distant relatives who simply couldn't grasp the depth of the betrayal. Dr. Winters helped me navigate this incredibly complex emotional terrain. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing, Mandy, she explained. You can forgive someone without allowing them back into your life. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself, to release the anger that binds you to them. Reconciliation requires genuine remorse and changed behavior from the other party. My parents, of course, showed neither remorse nor change. Their court-mandated apology letter blamed circumstances, minimized their actions, and subtly suggested I had overreacted. They had not earned reconciliation, and I had finally learned to trust my own judgment above social expectations. With the legal battle concluded, I focused intensely on rebuilding. The recovered money went straight back into my house fund, now supplemented by a promotion to executive marketing director that came with a substantial salary increase. By spring, I had placed a down payment on a small, craftsman-style home in a quiet neighborhood. My first true sanctuary. The process of healing, however, proved far more complex and non-linear than the legal proceedings. Trust came slowly, agonizingly so, even with people who had never betrayed me. I developed new financial habits, creating multiple layers of security around all my accounts. Perhaps most importantly, I learned to distinguish, with crystal clarity, between healthy generosity and exploitative expectations. Money is just a tool, Mandy, my financial therapist explained during our sessions. The problem was never your money itself, but how your parents used it to control and manipulate. Healthy financial relationships, I learned, involve mutual respect, clear boundaries, and explicit agreements. I practiced those principles as I helped Jacob establish his own financial independence. When he decided to open his own auto repair shop, I invested as a silent partner, with clearly documented terms. Our business relationship, surprisingly, strengthened our sibling bond rather than complicating it. Aunt Lisa remained a cornerstone of my chosen family, our Sunday brunches becoming a cherished tradition. "You remind me of myself at your age," she told me once, a soft smile on her face. "Building a life on your own terms, despite what the family expected. I am proud of you, Mandy." Her words healed something profound within me. The approval I had fruitlessly sought from my parents for decades meant absolutely nothing compared to the genuine pride from someone who truly saw me. My circle of chosen family expanded gradually. Zoe and her husband included me in all their holidays and celebrations. My colleague, Trevor, who had provided unwavering support during the legal proceedings, eventually became more than a friend. Our relationship progressed slowly, carefully, as I learned to trust again, his patience never wavering as I navigated my lingering trust issues. Perhaps the most surprising development came through my work with a support group for survivors of family financial abuse. Sharing my story helped others recognize patterns in their own families, while hearing their experiences validated my decision to prioritize my well-being over familial obligation. "You gave me permission to protect myself," one group member told me, her eyes shining with gratitude. "If you could stand up to your parents after 32 years, I could finally tell my brother to stop using my credit cards." 2 years after the theft, I celebrated my 34th birthday. I was surrounded by people who loved me without conditions, who supported me without exploitation, who respected my boundaries without resentment. Looking around at those faces, I realized I had created something my biological family could never provide: relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation. The deepest lesson I learned through this incredibly painful journey was that family is defined by behavior, not blood. My parents gave me genetic material and basic survival, yes, but they never gave me the unconditional love and protection that defines true parenting. The people who earned the title of family were those who demonstrated love through respect, support, and the celebration of my independence. I still occasionally encounter well-meaning people who insist I should reconcile with my parents. "They won't be around forever," they caution. "You'll regret not making peace." What these people fail to understand is that I have made peace. Not with my parents, but with myself. I have made peace with the reality that some relationships simply cannot be healed because one party refuses to acknowledge the harm they've caused. I have made peace with prioritizing my well-being over social expectations. I have made peace with creating my own beautiful definition of family. The money was recovered. The house was purchased. The legal case was closed. But the true, profound resolution came in recognizing my own worth and refusing to accept less than the respect I deserve, even from the people who brought me into this world. Family is not who you come from. It is who you choose, who chooses you in return, and who proves that choice through actions, not mere biology. In building my chosen family, I finally found the security and belonging my parents could never provide. That, my friends, is a lesson worth every single painful step of this journey. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who didn't respect your financial independence? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in every relationship.